The pain of loss is 3 times the joy of gain. This is a ratio that has now been established through behavioral economics and a lot of supposition.
I really had to soak that in when David Gardner said it. Here's the thing. While that accurately describes the psychological science influencing human decision-making, David, one of the co-founders of the Motley Fool, clarifies brilliantly that when it comes to investing, and I would say to entrepreneurship, that actually the joy of the gain is infinite times the pain of the loss. I'm Dan Simons, a restaurateur and co-founder of Founding Farmers Restaurant Group. Welcome to Founding DC, the podcast that shines a light on businesses homegrown in the backyard of the nation's capital and the entrepreneurs that make them thrive. My guest today is David Gardner, a well-known entrepreneur who founded the Motley Fool financial services company with his brother Tom in 1993. Crazy fact, he's one of the few stock pickers who has beat the market for 20 years. David's also a New York Times best-selling author, and I got my hands on an advanced copy of his newest book, Rule Breaker Investing, and it comes out this September. Don't let the word investing draw you in or turn you off. This book is a stunning page-turner, and I told David I'm ready to rename it The Entrepreneur's Guide to the Galaxy. We can all learn so much from his wisdom and endless optimism, and I saw that learning happening in real time as we recorded this episode in front of a live studio audience. Founding DC is presented by NFP, an Aon company, delivering the insurance and risk management expertise, insight, and service you need. Learn more at nfp.com. I also want to thank our sponsors, Shulman Rogers and the Georgetown University Entrepreneurship Program at the McDonough School of Business. Now, let's get foolish with David.
David, welcome to the show. Thank you, Dan. A delight to be with you. I want to start by reading something from the Motley Fool website. The stock market is a casino in the short run, a game in the medium run, and a wealth creation device in the long run. When I read that, I thought, that is totally logical. So why don't people realize it and follow it? I think it's because most people haven't really been taught the stock market or investing. There are requirements in some states these days for financial literacy equivalency to graduate high school, but I still think most people don't really get the stock market. And so they think buy low, sell high. And to me, those are 4 of the most harmful words if you're really trying to teach investing to people. But there's just not a lot of facility or understanding that the stock market is not that different from a farmer's market. You just walk down, look for good stuff at a price you'd like to pay, and then recognize that it's there to help you. And the stock market, in contrast to the farmer's market, the stuff that you buy goes up in value over time if you just let it. And most people interrupt that by jumping in, jumping out, worrying about tariffs, thinking this or that company, they're done. And I think as a consequence, we're all too short term. And so we don't get to that wealth creation part that you talked about, which is really the purpose of the stock market. You are a world-class educator. And so people think of you as, in many ways, as a conscious capitalist, as an investor, as an entrepreneur, obviously. And I think of you as kind of Yoda-ish. It's a big label to give someone. So I even paused. Do I want to give David the Yoda title? When did you start teaching things? Like, was it always in you, or has that grown? I think that it had to start early, but I don't even think of myself as a teacher, Dan. I think it's a very noble calling. My son is a teacher in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so we have teaching in our family. But I would say that it was, as we started this site, I won't even say website, because we started on AOL in 1994, August 4th of 1994, and people were not saying website at that point. So we started an online site, and I realized, in addition to just putting out stock picks on a regular basis to kind of prove our points and be accountable to what we're saying, we need to have story. We need to draw people in and help them understand how beautiful this ownership culture that we've all grown up in, that I hope we never take for granted, really is, that we can become part owners of the companies whose products and services we love and admire. And so I think, Dan, we were grasping after hooks, stories that we could share with a small online audience initially, and eventually a worldwide audience. And I could rock one or two of those. I don't know which direction you want to go, but it's just teaching. I think is nothing more than sharing what you know in a way that is magnetically attractive to other people.
See, I love when you talk. This is an aspect of entrepreneurship. I believe that teaching is a required ingredient to entrepreneurship because the best teachers are the best students. And that student journey, that lifelong learning, you look at the Motley Fool today, and you look at where you and your brother were as co-founders, you were just kids. You didn't know anything, and yet, yeah, you did.
Well, I think that we were taught, as a DC native, the Georgetown Safeway on Wisconsin Avenue, which was constructed in our youth. I remember going, and Dad would be there Saturday morning. He was there with the kids, and he would say, "Hey, kids, look. Chocolate pudding. We own some of the company that makes that chocolate pudding, a few shares. Let's go get more chocolate pudding." And so it made him such a wonderful dad. And he himself was not a professional. He's a lawyer here in Washington, but his real calling and love was the stock market and economics. And so he ingrained that in us from an early age. And I think, Dan, that just kind of spilled out over the course of time. Again, DC born, DC proud. Shout out to, a football team that now has a name. And I just think that the opportunity to learn from somebody, a father, who loved something and conveyed it to us over time. When I turned 18, the day I turned 18, he said, "Here you go. I've been investing for you from birth. This is all you're ever getting from me. Your stock portfolio. Don't screw up." And while I was not fully prepared for that conversation, I actually had been over-prepared for that conversation based on the teaching that he had done to us as kids.
You grew up in a learning environment.
It's true.
Whether you knew it or not. And then it's in you. And I could say I am grateful for your teachings. I have been a loyal reader and follower of your advice. It is remarkable what you do. And you've given me a construct about investing and entrepreneurship that has helped me with a vocabulary to teach my kids.
Thank you.
So it's special. And it's one more aspect of entrepreneurship where we lift people up when you don't even know that you're lifting people up. You touched on your DC roots, your dad, there was a generation before that. You're now raising the fourth generation of a DC family. The show's called Founding DC. Is there one thing about the DMV, as we call it here, DC, Maryland, Virginia, is there one thing about the DMV that resonates most deeply with you about why you love it here?
Yeah, business. I think a lot of people, especially when I travel outside of the city, go down to North Carolina, which is my adopted home state since I was born in Washington, D.C. and had nothing, no real flag or vote or understanding of the larger picture. North Carolina is my adopted home state. When I go down, people are like, "Oh, you're from D.C., huh?" And on a podcast, you can't see the expression I made in front of a live studio audience, but it's basically like, "Are you weird? Are you one of us? Who are you?" But I started a business here. My grandfather was a very successful businessman here. I love business. I think business is such a beautiful construct because willingly we buy and sell from each other. You're good at this. Let me buy that from you. I'm good at that. You can buy that from me. And look at how it's advanced humanity over the last few centuries. It's a beautiful thing. And people don't necessarily think Washington, D.C. is rich in and with business, but it is. We are a very successful, worldwide recognized urban center of business. And so, yeah, that's to me what jumps out and what I'm proud of.
The DC business community and entrepreneurial community, one of the special things and unique things, it is so supportive. I actually heard this from a previous guest, Susan Tynan,
in one of my conversations with her, she was telling me about her journey, and she was saying how there's this nothing cutthroat here in DC. And, she went to business school and she's sort of done things all over, and she's seen different cities and different entrepreneurial communities. And she really remarked on how through her whole journey, she has felt like the community of other entrepreneurs and people are just rooting for her. There is a specialness here where we're supporting each other, and your acknowledgement that, the inside the Beltway politics thing is really a separate parallel, but as entrepreneurs, we're here, and DC is really fertile ground for us.
And you're a great example for me, Dan. The business that you've built, which has a much bigger presence than our business has in this greater DC area, every day is so rewarding for everybody that you're connected with, whether it's your customers, who are the reason we do business, to your wonderful employees, many of whom I've met, to your partners and suppliers, and that you're a voice for DC in this podcast is a great example of what you just said. So thank you for what you do. And I from my standpoint, I love always being the underdog. I love being misunderstood. I love people thinking, oh yeah, it would just be politics. And because that's exactly what the Motley Fool was at the start. I mean, we willingly called ourselves fools. A fool and his money are soon parted. Why would you guys do that? So I love setting up that kind of a framework that you can then spend the rest of your life or your business or your time trying to prove not people wrong, but why what you're doing is right.
You certainly have proved yourself and your followers right. It's remarkable.
We're wrong a lot too, Dan. Want to make that clear.
So let's dig into that, because what I could be going on about is that you owned NVIDIA before anybody knew what it was, and you own Amazon, and your cost basis on those stocks, I think, is 16 cents. And there's stuff to rave about there. But that isn't your magic. Your magic is in your willingness to lose in order to win. Tell us more.
Sure. I think that anytime you buy 20 stocks, which is a good minimum base for a portfolio, you should expect 2 to 4 of them to be really good, 5 to 8 of them to be good, a few more to be average, and let's say 3 left over to be horrifically bad picks. And overall, I generally try to be right 6 out of 10 times, which, by the way, is an awesome percentage if you can maintain it. But the truth is, you don't even have to be right 6 out of 10 times, because if you're holding great companies like Amazon or NVIDIA, you can be wrong about so many things and still be so very right in market beating. But so I think that a lot of people treat investing, especially it's their money, they've saved it, which is the most heroic thing of all to do. It's much easier to invest than just to save money in the first place. But they've saved that money, and for a lot of us, we don't want to lose it, but we do know we need to invest it. And so we go in, I think, with an unwillingness to lose. And I have a much higher, I think, risk tolerance than most people that I know, and most of our customers probably. And I always try to put that out there. But I also have higher returns than most other people, because I think being able to lose to win is fundamental to winning grandly. So I'll give a quick example. The Motley Fool Rule Breakers service, for which I picked stocks for 20 years, I once did the math. This is horrific and embarrassing. Here it is. I had picked 389 consecutive monthly stock picks, 2 a month for about 20 years. And these are for our audience. This is Jeff who introduced us. Jeff, yeah, you may have bought some of these. And the ones I'm about to mention, I apologize, because of the 389 picks that I'd made to paying customers, 63 of them were down 50% or more. And I'm a professional. I'm somebody, each one of those, I was like, I love this company. I think it's going to do well. I'm not sure. We're willing to take risks. 63 of the 389 picks were cut in half or worse. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. The 63rd best pick was up 402%. It was HubSpot, which is a great business. And today, it's up 900%. So the 63rd best stock was up 400%. And if you're doing the math with me, and I know there's a lot of math in the room here, you're starting to see the beauty of this, because you're seeing that the worst you could ever do is lose 100%, which we never have quite done. 50 to 100, so you could average those at 75 and say those are just 63 horrible 75% losses. Our 63rd best pick was up 400%. Our best pick was up over 100 times in value. On its own, it more than made up for all 63 of those picks and left money on the table. And there were 62 others in between 400 and 10,000.
This
And
lesson,
so this is important.
losing to win. This is the entrepreneur's lesson. We are actually not having an investing conversation. I know that that has been your profession, but parallel to that, you started a company and you were an entrepreneur. And the advice that you give, I'm leaning into you. You know, I realize that our listening on this doesn't see me leaning into you, but your education to investors, what I want to tell you today is you are an entrepreneurial mentor. And I will give you evidence, because I got my hands on a copy of your new book, which doesn't come out for a few months, but the publisher sent me it. I thought, I got to prepare for this podcast, so I'm going to read some excerpts. They sent me the whole book. I started to read it. I had an hour blocked out. So, no, I'll read this. I'll look for some things. I read the book cover to cover in one sitting that day. Had to cancel 3 other meetings. I just texted people and said, I can't do the meeting, I was so engrossed with habits and traits and principles. And you weave together this fabric. And I just want to give you some feedback. The title of your book is Rule Breaker Investing. I've decided to change the title of your book. I haven't informed your publisher yet. But I really think your book should be called An Entrepreneur's Guide to the Galaxy. It's fantastic. So I want to pull out a few of these. But this framing of the way being a great investor, or just being an investor, can make you a better business person.
You bet.
And being a business person can make you a better investor. I want to dive into that. Now, when you hear that, investor, business person, and vice versa, what goes through your mind?
Well, it's my favorite line from Warren Buffett, and he's lived that. And I'm not. I deeply admire Warren Buffett. I'm not in the Buffett school. I'm actually sort of the rule breaker, doing what the Buffett people don't do, which I think is part of our charm at Rule Breakers. But I mean, how can you not so deeply admire what he has done for the world, let alone for the stock market or for the many businesses that he owns? And that's his cardinal line to me. I'm a better investor because I'm a businessman, he said, and I'm a better businessman because I'm an investor. And I think so many of us tend to, not in this room and not among your listener base, but a lot of people outside there, Dan, tend to just do one of those things and not the other. So they're denying themselves so much learning, because it's not a 2D plane, investor, business person, investor. It's actually a 3D gyre that just kind of goes up over the course of time if you're doing it right, I think. And so that's what I've tried to convey and teach. And I love what you said about my book. Thank you, Dan. You're the only one, literally, who's read my book. Seriously, this is the first interview that I've done 5 months ahead of the publication date of September 16th of Rule Breaker Investing. And I didn't even know my publisher was going to send you the whole galley. And so, Dan, you are literally the only person in the world who's read the book.
I'm going to read a quote to you from the first page. This is a quote that you're quoting the legendary Judy Blume.
Okay, yeah.
The best books come from someplace inside. You don't write because you want to, but because you have to. Why'd you put it there?
It's a beautiful quote. It's right there on the frontispiece of the book. I put 3 of my favorite quotes up there, and that's one of them. And it just describes why I wrote the book. I truly have been keeping notes since 2008 for a book that I would someday write. I have written a number of books before. The Motley Fool Investment Guide was a big bestseller in the 1990s, but I wrote half books because my brother wrote half and I wrote half. So I never actually written my own book. And I knew I was going to keep notes for it, and I did on Evernote, my second brain. for 15 years. And somewhere around the year 2016, I was sure I was going to write it that year or the year after, and I still didn't. And as I thought about it, if I get struck by lightning on the way home from work tonight, my frying corpse in my deathbed will say, "Why didn't you write the book?" And so I realized I have to do it. So I finally did. And so Judy Blume's line is beautiful. It's true. I mean, it's not just true of books. I mean, for many of us, it's whatever our art is, whatever our calling is, like whatever makes you sing and you want to make the rest of the world sing. So for me, the Judy Blume quote nails that kind of, I'll never be pregnant, literally, for biological reasons. But for about 9 months, I sat there writing it and just getting so excited about it. And it all ended for me in August. I concluded that writing months ago.
I can say, bravo. There's a lesson in there. You've been taking notes for decades. This is, I have a regret about this, about myself. I was just having this conversation the other night with my kids and my wife, Susie, over dinner, that I never kept a journal. And we were talking about some of the COVID stuff. My kids are getting a little older now, so they're asking about more about the, the business entrepreneurship stuff. And I was just, I like to share the pain with them. And I said, you guys, write things down. Write down what you learn. Write down your mistakes. Just write it down, because you just can't remember. My son was stunned. He was asking me about high school, when I was in high school. And he's a freshman in college now. And I said, Oliver, I don't remember that much. And right now he's like, wow, Dad, how can what feels so like the most important things in the world to me right now, and you're telling me you went through that stuff and you don't remember it. So I said, write it down. And then I just heard you say, you have written it down. Because if you didn't write it down, there is no book.
It's very true. And I have a horrible memory. So I absolutely have to write things down. But I do want, for anybody who might keep a journal, and I've done that a little bit on and off, but more what made my book was just, oh my gosh, that amazing, funny thing that I just saw happen on the stock market. Want to make sure I write about that. I thought it was going to be 4 years later. It's going to be more like 14 years later. But so I was noting things at the time. But anybody who's ever tried to journal or says I should have done that, but I shall do that. Dan, you can do it today, right? Tomorrow, you can do it. Take inspiration, as I did, from American literary great Henry James, because, of course, he's Henry James, the novelist, the genius mind. And I read once a little bit of his own journal, and here's how it would read. March 3rd, it rained today. That was the entry. And what you start realizing is micro-journaling, starting it small. The big mistake I think a lot of people make is they're like, I finally need a journal. And so they finally decide to, and they write like a 6-page screed. And then the next day they're like, I can't keep that up. And so they don't keep it up, like lots of other diets and sometimes investing. They do it for a little while, but they don't keep it up. But I think starting small and building, just realizing you literally just record something every day.
Yeah, take the
3 words. James Clear, Atomic Habits, phenomenal book. I know a lot of head nodding in the room. Right. So these kinds of lessons are just profoundly helpful for us through life.
You share another lesson in your book that the only way David beats Goliath is by not following the rules. Connect those dots for us.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to reference myself, even though my first name is David. I think we all know what I'm talking about. But I think that if you try to play the game as the world is playing the game, as Goliath is playing the game, you're going to lose, because Goliath has Goliath's game, shapes the world around it. We all have expectations about what the stock market would be or do. And then we have people who I think are a little bit crazy and frenetic and popular on TV who make it sound like you need to be jumping in and jumping out and following everything. And by the way, I love WTOP. I want to make that very clear. I grew up in the city. I grew up with WTOP. And, there can be a tendency to make the news cycle its own thing. I don't view WTOP that way, but I do view financial cable TV that way. And I think that what happens, Dan, is that people just end up thinking they can't play that game at all. And so, but what I've decided is that the best way to beat Goliath is to play the game differently. And Malcolm Gladwell wrote a wonderful book called How David Beats Goliath, where he goes over a number of real world examples of this. But that's absolutely been my approach with the stock market. I am definitely not trying to play a buy low, sell high game. I'm not trying to play a trade in, trade out game. I'm not looking for the discarded cigarette butt that's a fallen company that's going to turn it around and become a winner. A lot of the constructs that people have in their minds in terms of what stocks they would want, if they even own stocks, as much of the world is telling them you should never buy stocks directly. To beat the market would just be luck. That's monkeys throwing darts at a dartboard, blind monkeys no less. This is a lot of the conventional wisdom of our time. I obviously completely disagree with it. One of the fun questions you and I had recently on Conversation was, and this works water cooler anytime with anyone, what is something that you believe that most people don't believe? That's just a fun question for anybody. For entrepreneurs, if you can answer that question with a business, that's one of the most powerful things you can do. It may not work out for you. Many of us fail at different points. But if you can, and so the Motley Fool business, I only realized this after hearing this line in retrospect, was formed on the basis that you can beat the market. You absolutely can beat the market. And the whole world is set up to tell you,
Right.
that would be luck, you can't, etc.
And that, what I love about David Beats Goliath is the premise. Just simply that. That is what the entrepreneur must believe. It's easy to think, oh, I can't open a restaurant. How am I going to compete with Olive Garden or McDonald's or a Michelin-starred chef? I can't start a phone company. How am I going to compete with Amazon? I can't start an investment firm. How am I going to compete with Schwab? And it's really the perspective of, yes, you can. And for me, it's go where they aren't. So the most interesting place in a retail store for me is where no customers are standing. The most interesting place in the grocery store is the spot that's empty, that no one stops. I go and I stand there. I love to go to empty restaurants because what I'm learning or trying to learn is why. Why isn't it working? Why isn't this space utilized? What's turned people off? And then I try to glean those lessons. And so letting go of who cares about Goliath? He can't be, or she can't be everywhere at once. So I learned in martial arts, avoid the head-on collision of force. I can't beat that monster. Yeah, right, but I can step to the side and kick his knee. And so I took that lesson from the book, and it struck me as, when we started the first Founding Farmers, nobody wanted to know where their food came from. Nobody cared about what farmers were doing. People thought we were weird or that the plant, the environment mattered. So that lesson I found striking. There was another in the book that you talk about how our biology is problematic with our psychology. Can you explain how those for entrepreneurs can crash into each other?
Yeah. So, this is now very well established, but it's worth always just bringing back up, both in the context of business and investing.
I want the entrepreneurial context.
Yeah, right. So the pain of loss is 3 times the joy of gain. This is a ratio that has now been established through behavioral economics and a lot of supposition. I'm sure it goes back to the Greeks, but it's really important to understand the implication. The pain of loss.
I would have to skip.
The pain of loss is 3 times the joy of gain. So if you heard me earlier, I know we're going to go entrepreneurship, but I'm going to go investing context quickly. If you heard me earlier talking about just how painful it is to lose 50% on a stock, we have members who they join our services, the Motley Fool. I make a bad stock pick, and their first one they lose, and they're like, "What do? I don't know what to do. Should I cancel? I'm going to cancel," and it's totally understandable because we process that so much harder than we celebrate the wins. And the amazing thing about investing, entrepreneurship in the SEC, is that the most you can lose is 100%, and the most you can make is actually infinite. It's like, thank you, it's 16-cent cost bases on Amazon or NVIDIA still holding. And so you start to see that the joy of gain, and this is true now of business as well, the joy of gain is infinite times the pain of loss. It's not calculable. And our biology is not that way, because our ancestors, the reason we're here, if the trees shook a little bit, someone ran, and a few other people said, I didn't even notice the trees. And then out comes something.
The tiger eats them.
The tiger eats them. And so we are all descendants of the people who ran. And it's not that they ran all the time. And I'm happy to say we happen to live in the country in the world that I think unleashes entrepreneurs best. I think I'm so proud of our country, and I love our entrepreneurial resilient spirit. So I think we get that best. And yet still all of us, and this affects all of our decisions in life, all of us fear loss more than we can appreciate and celebrate gain. Your previous guest, Susan Tynan, did a nice job speaking to that briefly. She's like, I tend to read all the negative reviews, but the reality is that there are also positive reviews, and we can learn from those too. So I would just say, as entrepreneurs, obviously the majority of new business startups fail. And I do remember being invited to London to speak as an entrepreneur. This is like 20 years ago. But in England, they were having us Americans there because they were saying, we admire that you can fail in America and it doesn't end your reputation or your business prospects or career. We want more of that here in the UK. And I love that about America. I think one of our 5 core values as Americans is resilience. And no one knows that better than an entrepreneur. And I love your story, Dan, about starting Founding Farmers and like, who even cares about where the food came from? Because that's true. That was my consciousness back then. And it's really changed. But you are such a rule breaker yourself. And that's always with the most positive context that I can give it to, because I don't think you even needed to read my book, frankly. Dan, you've been very kind about what you said, but having gotten to know you, I know that this is how you think. I love that you say, I'm going to do that now. Where are the empty spots in the retail establishment, and why? What are the empty restaurants? That learning by negative inference. There's a beautiful book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards that some of you may have come across. And it's all about how to draw better. And I draw very, very poorly, but I got a little bit better when I started realizing it's not the thing itself you're drawing. It's actually the negative space around the thing that you're drawing. And if you think about that as an entrepreneur or an investor, investing business in life, I think it gives you real insights, and you already have it.
This is why, as entrepreneurs, I'll just share it this is why I push myself to run towards the fear. Because nowadays, it's probably not a tiger hiding behind the tree. And so I don't have to worry that my life will end, but I do feel, I feel the fear. Entrepreneurship is not a no fear journey. It's a fear-filled journey. I think the mistake that we can make is thinking that the fear is supposed to make us stop or turn around. For me, the fear just makes me open my eyes and push forward. Because what I know and what I have learned from others and from my journey is that it's on the other side of today's fear that something awesome might happen. Not always. There might just be failure on the other side of the fear. But to let the fear stop us, that's the person who cancels their subscription to the Motley Fool. That's the person who says, I just won't take that step. And the way that you framed in your book this psychology and biology, I had never thought of it. So I wanted to share it because it really struck me. We have to become, each of us, better teachers, because then we understand ourselves and we get better on that journey. Talent and genius. Tell me the difference between these two things.
Arthur Schopenhauer, 19th century, highly quotable German philosopher. This is one of my favorite lines because for me, it defines who I want to invest in. Because when I really think about the stocks, and that's not the focus of our interview, it's obviously a lot of the book. But when we think about the stocks that we would want to buy, I first and foremost look at the people who founded the business. I hope they're still going. I hope they own stock in it. But even if they didn't, I care so deeply about human flourishing and character and looking at people and say, I'm going to invest in that person. That first and foremost, in addition to the purpose of the company or whatever it is, those are the two things, both right-brained, non-algorithmic, non-AI, just looking at the world and saying, what do I want to flourish? And do I believe that person can get us there? Schopenhauer, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. And for me, that so beautifully describes the greatest stock picks that I've made to a stock driven by a visionary who other people were trying to copy ultimately, and sometimes successfully so. The talented hitting a target no one else can hit. They're just really adept. But genius hits a target no one else can see. Those are the rule breakers. Those are the dreamers. Those are the visionaries. Those are the Steve Jobses. I realize he's a controversial figure. Those are the Elon Musks. Those are the John Mackeys who started Whole Foods as a hippie when people thought organic food was crazy talk. These are all just in our lifetimes, and I'm excited about the next 30 to 50 years where I hope to be on the planet looking for this exact same pattern recognition of genius, not just talent.
For any aspiring entrepreneur, and I want to clarify that entrepreneurship is something I think you can do. You can do it as an employee of someone else's company. You can do it founding and running your own company. It's a way of getting after it. It's a way at looking beyond what is just there. You referenced the negative space. Everyone else, like there's a drawing and people look at the lines. Look at what isn't there. And when you investigate that, you have a chance to do amazing things inside someone else's company, inside your company, whatever. It's your own journey. You can elevate as to wherever you want to go to. And maybe you can become a Goliath. But if you want to stay on top, you still have to keep doing this and reinventing. You and your brother started the Motley Fool all those years ago. You built this just global advisory firm. So you're not only advising people on other investors, other entrepreneurs to bet on. I know you probably don't like the word bet, but to invest in and to select, to believe in. But you had to do this journey of running your own company. And I know that hasn't been a straight line, because it's never a straight line for any of us, is it? No. Was there a near business death Motley Fool moment that's your least favorite?
Absolutely. It's easy to remember because we started as a paper newsletter for our parents' friends in July of 1993. We launched on AOL in August of 1994. By the summer of 1996, we were on the cover of Fortune magazine. So a standing start of a paper newsletter for your parents' friends inside of 3 years. Just an incredible ascent, just utterly shocking and so much fun and beautiful. And we then hired up to 435 employees. And then the stock market started declining in late 2000. And then 2001 happened. And a lot of things fell over in 2001. And our business, in a very small way, was one of those. I watched Amazon, which I'd recommended, split adjusted now 16 cents. It went from 95 to 7 over the course of 18 months. So all of our gains wiped out at the time in such a galvanic company. So we did our first layoff. And I remember we had legal advice. In Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, we rented out a separate facility in which we had a room in which we had everybody come in, and we said, unfortunately, 100 of us of 435 are not going to have a job next week. We love you all, and we're so sorry that this is happening. And we came back from that, Dan, and we said, first of all, we're not going to have any more armed guards or legal doing this anymore. And second, we're not going to have to do this again because we just laid off 100 people. And 3 months later, we laid off 100 more. And then 3 months later, we laid off more than 100 more. And we watched our business go from 435 employees to 85 in 9 months. And I think every business of any size, of any length, has had at least one near-death experience. I think that's almost the hero's journey. It's almost a cliche at this point. What was your near-death experience? I think I could ask a lot of others in this room. That was ours.
I hear just the change in your voice.
My voice changed?
As you tell the story, that even all these years later, you remember it. I try not to swear. I'm from Boston, so those words but it scars you because you realize that while it hurts you for people to lose their jobs, it's them who have lost their job. And it is painful. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs have one of those. I'm going to say the name of a bank. I want your reaction.
Sure.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah. So Silicon Valley Bank, this fortunately was not a near-death experience for us. This was a death experience for them. But the problem for us was that in 2023, as many of us may remember, Silicon Valley Bank imploded. And our 9-figure cash hoard on our balance sheet was largely housed at Silicon Valley Bank. And that relationship that we built up, we love you. We love you guys. You guys are some of our earliest customers. You've always been loyal to us and us back to you. And it was true for more than a decade with Silicon Valley Bank. Again, we're a small fish in a much larger pond for them. But all of a sudden, over one hellacious weekend, we couldn't get anybody on the phone at Silicon Valley Bank as we scramble to do what we probably should have done a year before, to diversify our assets more than we had. We have an outstanding financial team. Our CFO, Kira McDonough, has been in our company for more than 20 years. They know what they're doing, but we're all always learning all the time. We would not have expected Silicon Valley Bank reacting to another crypto bank's failure to all of a sudden chain react into the bank that we had our assets largely housed in, not answering our phone calls and being gone within a week. So there isn't time right now. Not everybody's that interested in finance to really go through what happened. But if anybody's ever interested, Kira McDonough is a hero, and she can tell you exactly the things that we learned and did from that experience.
I want to know how you felt when she called you and said,